Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people have been asking me how my diabetes is going. For those of you that may be new here, first of all, thank you very much for joining our awesome community. About 6 months ago, on the 13th of January of 2023, I was diagnosed as being diabetic, like a full-blown diabetic. I had no idea. The only reason I found out is because my wife had kept telling me, go to the doctor, get a checkup, go to the doctor, get a checkup, and I wouldn't do it. And finally, I'm like, okay, I'll go get a checkup. And it'd been like 7 years before I'd even gone to the doctor for a basic checkup. And when they did the blood work and everything, I came back, the doctor says, hey, listen, man, everything looks really good except that you're diabetic. You're about twice as much as what you're supposed to be in the diabetic range. Meaning that in order for you to be considered diabetic, they take a test which is called a hemoglobin A1C, and that measures what I like to call the sticky sugar that sticks to your blood and stays there long term. It measures that. Well, for someone to be considered normal in the normal range, it's like between 4.5 and 5.5. That's the normal range. You're not diabetic, you're not pre-diabetic or anything like that. And pre-diabetic is between 5.6 or 5.6 all the way to 6.5. That's pre-diabetic. Anything after 6.5, you're a diabetic, considered a diabetic. My A1C came back at I think it was 9.2 or 9.3, and that's obviously very bad. And my average glucose reading came back at about, I think it was 217, where normal is anywhere between 70 to about 100. So my average glucose reading came back about twice as much as what it used to be. Well, when I found that out, the first thing that I told my doctor was, Doc, I don't want to take any medications. You tell me what I need to do in order for me to tackle this head on without taking any medications. And he pretty much told me, hey, listen, I can't really tell you to do something other than for me to prescribe you medications, but I can tell you off the record that you can go take a look at these YouTube channels. And one of them was Dr. Jason Fung. The other one was Dr. Ken Berry. The other one was Dr. Shafee, Anthony Shafee. And there's another gentleman that I found on my own whose name is, the YouTube name is Beat Diabetes, and also Sugar MD. I started binge watching all of those channels and started getting ideas as to how I would tackle my diabetes without any medications, any prescription medications. And I came to the conclusion from watching all that I needed to cut out all carbs. I needed to cut out all carbs right away, and I did that. I started out a little bit slow doing what's called a ketovore diet. A ketovore diet is a diet where you consume, I would say, less than 30 grams of carbohydrates a day. Be it from fruit, be it from vegetables, be it from pasta, anything. You can't eat more than 30 net grams or 30 total grams, okay? The net gram is what's left over after you take out the fiber, but the total grams is what's there including the fiber. So total grams, no more than 30. And I did that, and then I went down to 20, and then I went down to like 10. And then what I did after about the second month or so is I turned carnivore, where all I ate was meat products, animal products, meat, beef, bacon, butter, eggs, cheese. I didn't eat any kind of vegetables, anything that had carbs at all, unless there were trace elements of carbohydrates, for example, in the eggs and the cheese. But other than that, it was all from animal products. Well, I got my results for my first blood work, which I shared with you on a previous video, and then I shared with you the results for my second set of blood works, and now I just got the results for my third set of blood work. Well, I already shared that with you on a previous video, and it was like towards the end, so a lot of people didn't watch it because a lot of people don't stay towards the end of the video, and a lot of people have been asking me, so I thought that I would do a dedicated video to tell you all my story from when this begun, for those of you that are new to the channel and maybe haven't caught my series that I have, or my playlist that I have on beating diabetes with ketovore and carnivore. So I thought that I'd do, a standalone video on this, and also go over a great article that I found that just happens to go right along with the carnivore diet. And the name of that article is this right here: Meat Consumption and Longevity. Researchers have found that worldwide, meat intake is associated with a longer life. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is pretty much contradictory to what they've been telling us all our lives, if you're a half centurion or younger, that is. So we're going to go over that article, but first I wanted to go over with the results of my blood work. Now, I'm not going to show you the entire blood work scheme that they worked up, because there's a lot of stuff there that just really doesn't have much to do with diabetes, but it just goes to show that they want to look at everything, since the doctor does know that all I'm eating pretty much is meat, protein, fat, stuff like that. So my very first A1C was 9.2, and that was on the 13th of January. And that day when I found out, ladies and gentlemen, or I found out about a week later, as soon as I found out, like I said, I went on military mode and I did what I needed to do in order to bring it down. And you could say that the results for myself, I'm not going to say that they're disappointing, because they're not. Because whenever you're progressing, then you're doing well. It's just that for myself, it's been a little bit slower than I would have liked it to be, especially being that I've really stuck to my guns when it goes to eating only animal-based products. Not too long ago, to celebrate, after I got my last results back, I actually ate some cabbage, some stir-fried cabbage, because I went out to dinner, and surprisingly so, about an hour and a half after I ate that stir-fried cabbage with a steak, of course, I checked my blood glucose level, and it was right where it's supposed to be, right within range. It was, I think, 101. So that's really good for eating, a good amount of cabbage, which is a vegetable, and then taking your glucose about an hour and a half afterward. So anyways, January 13th, my A1C was 9.2. And then the next test was in April. April 19th was my next test, and my A1C had gone down to 6.8. So it came down a considerable amount, but it's still on the diabetic range because it's above 6.5. Well, I just got my last blood work done, and my A1C is down to 6.3, which is below the diabetic range, but still in the pre-diabetic range. I consider that success, and I really can't wait till I go do my next blood work sometime in August, in late August, to see if I'm getting even better, because I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing now. Eating mainly proteins and fats that are animal based has really been working for me. Let me just tell those of you that maybe don't know this, that maybe haven't experienced this. Some may say that, well, don't you miss eating vegetables? Don't you miss eating bread and stuff like that, drinking milk and things like that? Absolutely not, ladies and gentlemen. It's I don't know how to describe it, but well, yes, I do. I'm satisfied. I usually eat once a day. Sometimes I'll wake up hungry because maybe I had an active day the day before and I didn't eat enough. And if I wake up hungry, I'll just make myself some bacon and eggs, or bacon with steak. And then I'll eat my next meal probably 6, 7, 8 hours later, before 6 p.m. All right, before 6 p.m., I make sure that I eat my meal, and then I'm done for the day. And that's it. If I have anything, it may be a coffee with some heavy cream in it, and that's it. So I allow myself to eat between noon and 6. I eat any time between that time, and usually it's only one time. And the reason why it's one time is because it's all that it takes to satisfy me. I usually have between 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of meat, be it ground beef, be it a big fat steak, or be it a combination of maybe a pound of steak and 5 or 6 eggs, etc. I have fish once or twice a week to make sure that I get my omega-3s, and I have it in the form of either halibut or salmon, yellowfin, or salmon or tuna also. And I love the sardines that they sell at Costco, a little bit of hot sauce in that, and they are delicious. So I make sure to do that. Also, once a week, I have what is called a warrior burger. And what a warrior burger is a hamburger that has a mixture of organs, or an organ into it, so that you can get those really good nutrients that are in animal organs. Well, what I do is I go to my local butcher. His name is Tommy G's, and I have him make me up a mixture of cheddar hamburgers, which is hamburgers with a little bit of cheddar cheese mixed in there, and then he puts in 10% liver. So those burgers with the 10% liver, I usually have them once a week. Usually during the weekend, I'll have a pound of those, and that satisfies my nutrient needs for that week. Now, let me go ahead and share with you my cholesterol, my triglycerides, and all that kind of stuff from the beginning to now. That way you can know that going on this kind of a carnivore diet, you can say ketovore / carnivore, hasn't really affected my cholesterol in a negative way. Before we start with the cholesterol, let me go ahead and share with you one last piece of information, my average glucose reading. So when I first started this journey, the very first test, I remember telling you that my average glucose reading was 217, which is more than double what it's supposed to be. And then on my very next visit on the 19th of April, it went down all the way to 148, which is still a lot higher than what it's supposed to be, but that's not bad. Your average glucose level should never go above 125. Anything above 125, you're in the danger zone, and preferably you want it to be normal, to be in the normal range. You want it to be like between 70 and 100, right? And then here, my very last average glucose reading from this last test that I took was 134. So it came down from 148 to 134, still in the danger zone, but ladies and gentlemen, like I said, still making progress, and I can't complain about that. Now, my cholesterol has been a little bit up and down since I started this, but it's still good in my opinion. When I first started, my very first one was 197, which is not bad. 197, but my HDL, my high density lipoprotein, which is considered the good cholesterol, was a little low at 36. They like your good cholesterol, or HDL, to be 40 or above. My second testing was exactly at 40, so I had brought it up to where it's supposed to be. And now remember, this is just eating mainly meats during this time period, and no more than 20 to maybe 30 grams at the most of total carbohydrates for the day. And then this very last time that I went to check my cholesterol, it was 47. My HDL, my high density lipoprotein, was 47. Well, my cholesterol, my total cholesterol, went up this time to 210, mainly because my good cholesterol went up. And the doctor told me, yeah, your total cholesterol went up, but that's a good thing, because mainly it's because your good cholesterol went up, and you want your good cholesterol to be a little bit higher than 40. It's better that way. At least that's what I was told, ladies and gentlemen. And let's see, what else do we have here? Our triglycerides. When I first got my number one test, my triglycerides were at 116, which is considered good as long as they're under 150. And then on my second test, it was 94. So I was like, wow, that's great. I remember during that second doctor's appointment, I remember the doctor asking me, did you say you're only eating meat? And I said, yes. And he says, that's odd, because your cholesterol went down and your triglycerides went down. That was the second doctor appointment. And this doctor appointment here, my triglycerides went up to 102 from 94, which was my last one. But that is still well within the range, and the doctor said, don't worry about it. This is just fine. This is a very good reading for your cholesterol and your triglycerides and such. So ladies and gentlemen, what I have to say about my experience, because everyone is different, let me share this with you. Someone emailed me not too long ago, and they told me, hey, I started doing this carnivore thing. I think he said back in October, so about a couple of months before I started doing it. And he said he's lost like 160 pounds since he started doing it, and it's changed his life. So ladies and gentlemen, everyone is different. But what I'm here to tell you is my experience, and that it's so far working really well for me. My weight's not on this paper, but I do remember my weight. The first time that I went there, I had lost like 20 pounds, 23 or 24 pounds, right? And now I'm up to about 30 pounds. So between now and the last time that I went, I'd only lost about 2.5 pounds or so. My weight is coming off very, very slow. And I think it's because I have a very low metabolism, or slow metabolism, which is fine. Here, once the summer is over and I'm done doing outside work and things like that, I'm going to start doing some resistance training, and I'm hoping that that will increase my metabolism a little bit so I can take off more weight, because I do know that taking off some weight will really help. However, I'm very happy with the way that my glucose is going, my diabetes is going. And I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, that I owe it all to going carnivore, ketovore. Now let's see what it is that the mainstream media will keep from the public, because they definitely don't want you to know this. In February of last year, the International Journal of General Medicine published a study that was easy to miss, and no major media publication reported on it. Now, this is a medical journal, ladies and gentlemen, all right? This is not some YouTuber. This is a medical journal, all right? Total meat intake is associated with life expectancy. A cross-sectional data analysis of 175 contemporary populations, meaning countries and regions, 175 countries and regions, by Wenpeng Yu and his team of researchers. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, Yu, Y-O-U, so that's how I'm going to pronounce it from here on. For years, we have heard that the secret to a long life is to cut back on meat consumption and increase our intake of carbs. Advice that is enshrined in the USDA's dietary guideline for Americans. But that's not what the researchers found. Yu and his team analyzed data from 175 countries and territories, in other words, almost the entire world, and used various statistical methods to explore and compare the correlations between newborn life expectancy at 5 years of life, and intakes of meat and carbohydrate crops, respectively. The established risk factors to life expectancy, caloric intake, urbanization, obesity, and education levels were included as the potential confounders. The researchers found that worldwide meat intake was associated with a longer life. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Worldwide meat intake was associated with a longer life. Well, what about those places that we hear about, like in Japan, where they eat mainly vegetables? Well, they cover that here, ladies and gentlemen. And it seems, let me go a spoiler alert, it seems that those studies were kind of like skewed into one way, and the author of those studies kind of like failed to mention some things that these people here discovered, Mr. Yu here discovered. And here they finish it off by saying, by contrast, consumption of carbohydrates had a weak but negative correlation with life expectancy. Meaning that by contrast of consuming meat, carbohydrates had a weak, meaning that it didn't kill you off in half the time. So if with your life expectancy eating meat, it was, let's say, 85 years, it didn't mean that eating carbohydrates was going to kill you off at 40. So it had a weak but negative correlation, meaning that it wasn't good. It didn't add to you living longer. And here's where they get about the blue zones. You may be wondering about the blue zones, areas of the world where those with a high percentage of centurions, according to Dan Buettner, the key to a long life is to minimize meat consumption and eat plenty of vegetables. So according to this person right here, Mr. Buettner, all right, he did a study on these blue zones, and he says that the reason they have a lot of centurions there, people that live over 100 years old, is because they consume mainly vegetables as part of their diet. But listen to this. Don't the long-lived people living in these blue zones eat mostly plant-based diets? Now that's the question. That's what we've all been told, right? Well, actually, no. For example, in Sardinia, Mr. Buettner's first noted blue zone, meat consumption is higher among the long-lived peasants living in the mountains than those that live in the valleys, according to a 2015 study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, say the authors. In 1992, a study comparing the diets of mainland Japanese and those living on the island of Okinawa, they found that the proportion of the diet from protein and fats, mainly pork and pork fat, but also fish, was higher in Okinawa. Another fact, the Okinawans loved Spam. I knew I liked Okinawans for a reason. I was actually stationed there for a little bit, a couple of times. Consuming more than a can per person per week. Awesome. For a total of just over 7 million cans of canned pork annually. Spam is the kind of fatty processed meat that Buettner warns against. And here, ladies and gentlemen, in the blue zone of Icaria, Greece, Buettner describes the diet as plant-based with a low intake of saturated fats from meat and dairy. Yet, the islanders consume lots of goat and sheep dairy products, which are very high in saturated fat. And as is the custom throughout Greece, they frequently consume fatty lamb. So we've been told all our lives that animal proteins and animal fats just aren't any good for us, and it seems that maybe they weren't telling us the truth all along, ladies and gentlemen. I wonder why. I wonder how big the sugar industry is, i.e. the processed foods industry, which is mainly sugars of one form or another. Which world population has the longest lifespan? The answer is surprisingly Hong Kong. According to the United Nations data, the life expectancy in Hong Kong is 82.38 years for men and 88.17 years for women. But this is what's surprising, ladies and gentlemen. Inhabitants of Hong Kong have the highest consumption of meat and dairy foods in the world. 500 grams of meat and 281 grams of dairy per day, ladies and gentlemen. That's more than a pound of meat per day and more than half a pound of dairy per day. For those of you that don't know, about 454 grams equals to 1 pound. So it's well over a pound and well over a half a pound for the dairy. And here they go over another study that, of course, was put to the side by the mainstream media. Professor Lindsay Allen from the University of California at Davis, and who was recently introduced into the USDA ARS Science Hall of Fame. So this isn't just some lady that they picked off the street, ladies and gentlemen. Found that adding just 2 ounces of meat to the diet of poverty-stricken children in Africa transformed them both physically and mentally. 2 ounces of meat to the diet per day, ladies and gentlemen. And what's this thing that Germany came out with? I think it was Germany. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Where they want their people to eat 10 grams of meat per day, 1/3 of an ounce per day. I wonder why. You have to ask yourselves why. These people in government, they have a lot of PhDs working for them, right? They have a lot of people that know what they're talking about working for them. Why would they tell their people to do something that they know will not be good for their health? Right, so here it says that poverty-stricken children in Africa were transformed both physically and mentally over a period of 2 years, and compared to those who received a cup of milk and oil supplement, or a fourth group that received no supplement at all, and those who received meat, almost doubled their muscle development and showed dramatic improvement in mental skills. So ladies and gentlemen, this isn't like it helped a little bit, almost doubled their muscle development. 2 ounces of meat per day, all right, especially during their development phase. They also became more active, talkative, and playful at school, and showed more leadership skills. Test scores for mental skills improved by 35 points for the meat group, 14 points for the milk, and remained unchanged for the children who received no animal-based supplements at all, she said. Now, what does this tell me, ladies and gentlemen? That through my experience, and that through the experience and research that has been shared here with us, that we are not eating a proper human diet, like Dr. Ken Berry says. A proper human diet, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many doctors that are board-certified doctors, ladies and gentlemen. It's just that the mainstream media will never put them out there. They will never let you hear from one of their outlets that meat is good for you. They want you to think that meat will cause cancer and that will cause you to have an early death. It is the furthest thing from the truth. And there's a lot of doctors out there that know this, who are thankfully coming forward and putting their careers on the line and saying, hey, listen, you've been lied to all your lives in the name of money. Follow the money, ladies and gentlemen. But I would really like it if you did your own research, especially if you have a lot of chronic illnesses. Go to your doctor and say, hey, doc, what I think I'm going to do is an elimination diet. And he's probably going to say, what's an elimination diet? Because doctors aren't really taught about diets. And you're going to say, well, I'm going to start eating nothing but meat. I'm going to become a full-blown carnivore, right? And you can ease into it, right? Now, remember, this is my opinion. Go check with your doctor. You can ease into it like I did. I started ketovore, where I cut out all processed foods, all sugars, all everything, but I was still eating a salad here and there, as long as it was less than 30 grams of carbs per day total, right? You can ease into it. And then go just on meat alone. Meat, salt, water, and make sure to add some electrolytes as well, right? So you can ease into that diet. And then see how your body reacts. Some people, when they start doing it, they don't even go back. They just keep doing it because they feel so good and they feel so satisfied, where they're never hungry, they're not craving any sugar, and they only need to eat once, maybe twice a day. Everyone's different, but if you don't try it, you'll never find out, ladies and gentlemen. So again, I'll ask you, leave it down in the comment. What do you think? I'll ask you, why is it that you think that there is such a big fight, that there is such a war against meat? Do you really think that it's because of climate change?